Have you ever wondered how biostasis works? Let us guide you through it. Medical biostasis is an advanced technology that aims to give you the best chance to live much, much longer than what is currently possible. But why do people want to live longer? Some people just love life and want to experience it for as long as possible. Some people are just curious about the future. They want to see what future cities will be like and what humanity will be able to achieve. Others think the world would be better and more fair if the length of your life was your own choice. There is no doubt that you will ever run out of things to do in a multifaceted world like the one we live in. In the end, the motivations are plentiful. But how can someone sign up for biostasis? First, you simply sign up with us and our insurance partner. It just takes a few minutes. To start, we only need some personal information. Don't worry, it's a simple process and we will guide you through every step of the way. Biostasis is achieved with the help of cryopreservation. Cryopreservation is a very advanced procedure that's still rather expensive and therefore not widely available. Tomorrow offers high-quality cryopreservation with prices starting from €100,000 and going all the way up to €400,000. Of course, this is a lot of money that few people can easily afford. But there is a solution. Together with our big-term life insurance partner, we offer a subscription model which brings the cost down to only €30 a month. About 90% of all biostasis contracts are funded via a term life insurance model. Let's say you're 30 years old and you want to sign up. The first thing you need to do is sign up with Tomorrow Biostasis, and we automatically contract with our term life insurance partner for your coverage. Now, should you pass away during the coverage period, the term life insurance will cover 100% of the cryopreservation cost. You are protected from day one. Should you pass away after the coverage period, then unfortunately the term life insurance will not cover the cryopreservation cost. But of course there are other funding options for this situation as well. We make sure that our customers have everything in place well in advance. Furthermore, there is a high chance that prices will come down significantly in the future, as we work consistently to reduce the cost of a high-quality cryopreservation. Congratulations! You are now fully signed up. Now, should anything happen to you where current medical technology can't save you, like a terminal heart disease, cancer, or whatever it might be, and the worst case happens and you should die, our team stands ready to pick you up and bring you to a medical research institute that is equipped for cryopreservation. Cryopreservation is an advanced procedure that uses medical cryoprotectant solution and very low temperatures to protect your body, and most importantly your brain, the part that makes you, against degradation. We keep you safe and sound for however long it takes until medical technology will be advanced enough that revival is possible. While we can't guarantee, that is arguably better than any other option. Then, once technology makes it possible, we will revive you. Should you have gotten cryopreserved at an old age, then revival will only be done once rejuvenation technology is available and the human lifespan is much longer than it currently is. Sometimes people are worried that life in the future might not be as enjoyable as it is today. But if history has shown us anything, it is that the average quality of life keeps getting better during the years. Now, after revival, you are free to continue your life as fit and happy as ever. Of course, this is a complex topic where a short video doesn't really do it justice. We are more than happy to answer any questions you may have. Just reach out to us. Find out more at tomorrowbiostasis.com.
Welcome to the Tomorrow Biostasis Advanced webinar. Some of you might have been for a couple of weeks ago in our introduction to biostasis webinar. Now we're doing the more advanced topics. So I have a few introductions and then introductions to topics. And then as always, I'm more than happy to answer any questions. And of course today, feel free to really dig deep and ask any very advanced, very detailed questions that you might be interested in. For people who have already been to one of those advanced webinars in the past, some of the topics that I'll introduce you might already be aware of. Some might be new, but I think most of them are ones that you might have already seen. Probably within the next couple of months, we will have a third webinar where we go even deeper, where then people who have seen the introduction and this more advanced topics can then join again for fully new topics. But now, without further ado, we will start. One thing before we really get into it is that for all these webinars, we always do coupon codes. So for people who decide during the webinar or within the next days that they would that they now know enough about cryopreservation, have decided that they would like to sign up, there's a coupon code that we will only give out during these webinars that gives you a discount. And the code for now, for today, is webinar 16. So you can use it in our sign-up process on tomorrowbiostasis.com, and it will give you 50% off for 12 months on the membership. So the membership is 25 euros a month, and with the coupon code for 1 year, you get 50% off. So webinar 16 is the coupon code for today. All right, now let's get started. So as I said before, I'll introduce a couple of topics and then leave ample time for questions. For anybody who has questions, please put the questions into the YouTube chat, and then at the end of the quick introduction, which should take around 20, 25, 30 minutes, somewhere in that range, I will go through all these questions and answer them one by one. And if you feel like I didn't answer your questions, if we have gone through it, feel free to just reiterate or send it again. All right, quick introduction for those people who join us for the first time. I'm Emil. I'm one of the founders of Tomorrow Biostasis. I'm a doctor by training, and most of my time in the past I've spent either in cancer research or in running tech companies. But my personal motivation was always to do something for longevity and life extension. That's why I studied medicine in the first place. That's why I went into cancer research. And then over time I got unfortunately more and more disillusioned with academic research, and then the general progress and how fast the longevity and life extension field advances, especially if you consider how much they gain in maximum lifespans, actually years living longer, not only living healthy, which of course is very important, but actually living longer, that I decided to switch over from that field into the biostasis or cryopreservation field. And as I just said in the beginning, now I'm a founder and CEO of Tomorrow Biostasis, and I'm the president of the board of the non-profit European Biostasis Foundation, which is a research foundation in Switzerland that does biomedical research for the field and also does long-term storage. All right, so first I think it makes a lot of sense to look, not only say, hey, the body is then just cryopreserved, but look a bit more into detail what that actually means from a step-by-step process. And here, initially, what we do there's a couple of different options for every step that the body goes through. So initially, when we talk about SST, meaning standby stabilization and transport, currently worldwide different organizations employing different procedures, how they do it. So there's practically speaking two different approaches. One being that you do what is called whole body, or in general field cryoprotection, or you do field washout. Meaning that cryopreservation organizations, there are two in the US, ALCO and CI, there's EBF or us here in Europe, in Switzerland, in Germany, there's one in China and so on. But usually, of course, patients die, unfortunately, rather far away from these cryopreservation organizations. So they need to be brought to the organization, to the facility somehow. And you can do this either by field washout or field cryoprotection. Field washout means that the blood is being washed out against an organ preservation solution on site. And the body is then with that organ preservation solution at 4 degrees Celsius, cooled with ice, being driven or flown to the facility where then the cryoprotective agent is being perfused, and then the body is cooled down to cryogenic temperatures. Field cryoprotection, on the other hand, means that of course you do all the the first aid, the SST, like the stabilization, so chest compressions, oxygen, all of that you do on site, but you also do the whole perfusion procedure, so the perfusion with the cryoprotective agent on site wherever the patient is. And then you cool down on site to negative around 80 degrees. You do this with dry ice. And then at that temperature, you can, of course, at that point already cool down to negative temperatures because you have the cryoprotective agent in, so no ice is being formed. Then with that temperature, you enable longer periods of transport to the facility without any degradation going on. And of course, if you're very close to the facility, that might not be necessary. So let's say you're in Zurich and you die in Zurich, and then the facility is slightly outside of Zurich. No cryoprotection, no field cryoprotection is needed. But if you die far away in another country or so on, then it is advantageous. And that's one of the procedures that we're doing. So all of our teams are optimized on field cryoprotection. And in fact, the second factor is some organizations do neuro, meaning head only, or whole body. We exclusively do whole body. So the procedure that we employ for cryopreservation is called whole body field cryoprotection. Then during that cryoprotection procedure, you can use different cryoprotective agents, right? Probably the most two prominent ones are M22 and VM1. VM1 is used by a range of organizations. We use a modified version that is based on that. And then there's M22. M22 is the cryoprotective agent that is used primarily by Alcor in the US. There are different advantages for different cryoprotective agents. Some are more stable at different temperatures, some give more viability, some are better glass formers. In most experiments, they're relatively all in the same ballpark. One of the definitely differences is that M22 is significantly more expensive, like by tens of thousands of euros more. And in some experiments, at least in the lab, M22 gives higher viability, or at least on certain tissues. But it was optimized for kidney tissue, and of course, kidneys, sure, they should be preserved, but the primary concern, of course, for us and everybody else in the field is the brain. So I would argue all of them are relatively are good. If you just don't use just DMSO or something like that, all generally accepted cryoprotective agents are, at least in most circumstances, are pretty good. And then last but not least, once you arrive at the facilities, at that point the question is what kind of storage technology is used. Currently, probably 99.9% or something in that ballpark of cryopreserved cases are being preserved in long-term storage with so-called immersion dewars, meaning it's basically a large dewar which is filled with liquid nitrogen, and then the patient is in that liquid nitrogen immersed. There's a new technology that has been employed in a range of labs, and what we're currently establishing to do in Switzerland for whole body patients as the first organization that does that, which is called whole body ITS, or in general ITS, intermediate temperature storage. In that storage, with that storage solution, you store the patient in the gas phase above the liquid nitrogen. So the storage temperature is slightly higher. So liquid nitrogen immersion storage is around negative 196. ITS, intermediate temperature storage, is at somewhere between negative 130 and 140, always Celsius. The advantage of that is, and again, we do this for whole body patients, the advantage for that is that in that case there's less cracking, so there's less thermal stress, and thermal stress leads to, well, macroscopic, what is called cracking, where it's basically a release of, or like a fracturing due to due to thermal stress. And we're currently, so we will have immersion dewars as well, because ITS dewars are significantly more expensive, so we will have both options. And also for immersion dewars, there are ways how you reduce the amount of fracturing. but if someone wants to ITS do this, will be available probably in a year or so. Currently we're in the prototyping phase with a lab together in the US, and we'll offer that as well. Now, I mentioned that when the cryopreservation procedure starts, you want to do what is called SS, or the first S of SST, meaning stabilization, meaning that you want to cool down the patient as quick as possible, and you want to give metabolic support to, well, have the cells in the brain, the neurons and so on, degrade the least possible amount. So for that, you put ice water on the patient to do external cooling, right? External cooling is not bad, but it's not super efficient. So you want to combine external cooling by circulating the water around. So there's a pump in that water that circulates the water around the body, including the face, and so on. And then you want to give what is called CPS, called Cardiopulmonary Support. Very similar to cardiopulmonary resuscitation, CPR, but of course in our case, the goal is not to resuscitate a patient, but just to cool them down as quick as possible. So that means you have an automated chest compression device that basically gives, well, chest compressions. In certain cases you give oxygen, not in all cases, and you give a range of medications, blood anti-clotting medication, and a good amount of other things that improves the quality of cryopreservation. And then with that, you do, in our case, as I said, we do full body field cryoprotection, and you see here on this picture one of our ambulances that are equipped to do this whole procedure on site. So it has a heart lung machine, it has all the operation equipment to perfuse the cryoprotective agent, and once you do that, you cool further down with dry ice and then bring the patient to the organization. Now, when you do that, there are certain procedures how you can put the cryoprotective agent into the body. The main reason why you want to do this fast is because the outside cooling with just ice on the body, it doesn't have much surface area, right? It's just only the outside of the body. The cooling efficiency is relatively slow. It's the best you can do initially, but it's still relatively slow. So you want to introduce a cooled solution or cooled cryoprotective agent as quick as possible into the body to also start cooling from the inside. And of course, the circulatory system, all the arteries and the veins and so on, they have significantly higher surface area, so the cooling efficiency is much, much faster. So here on the right, you see basically the circulatory system, and you have multiple cannulation points where you can introduce that cryoprotective agent. And the most common ones are here at the neck, the carotids, close to the heart, the aorta, and then on the legs, the so-called femoral arteries. It's very important that you control pressure very, very well. Pressure is one of the, if you have too high pressure and perfusing cryoprotective agent, it increases viscosity due to higher concentration, so you need to make sure that pressure always stays within physiological levels, right? To make sure that there is no too high pressure. We could use so-called roller pumps for that. Roller pumps are basically the pumps that are being used in operation rooms for cardiopulmonary bypass, just like you might know it from a hospital. This is exactly what we use in these ambulances. Now, there are different advantages where you cannulate, and this here on the right, this blood vessel, this mess of blood vessels. It might not be absolutely apparent to at least people who don't have medical training where that is, but these are the blood vessels in the neck and then the head. Now, when you perfuse, and this goes a bit into detail, so the brain is supplied by 4 vessels, and this is kind of explaining why we cannulate on the heart. The brain is supplied by 4 vessels, 2 carotids here on each side of the neck, and then 2 vertebral arteries that are basically close or in the vertebral column. Now, if you perfuse only in the carotids, then technically the blood system in the brain should bring the cryoprotective agent to every location of the brain, because there's something which is called the circle of Willis that basically connects internally all these different blood vessels that supply the brain on the front and the back. The problem is that mostly for people who are a bit older, this circle of Willis can have degradation, so it can be occluded at certain locations. So it's not absolutely clear that when you only perfuse in the carotids, that then the whole brain is perfused well. So technically what you would need to do, you would need to cannulate both carotids and both vertebral arteries to make absolutely sure that the whole brain is perfused well. And of course, if you have 4 cannulation points, this just takes time. And time, of course, in cryopreservation is a big issue because you want to cool down as quick as possible to stop degradation processes. Now, if you cannulate on the aorta is kind of the main vessel in the body, right? It's the large vessel that comes out of the heart. And all vessels going up, all arteries going up, both vertebrals and carotids on the front, vertebrals on the back, they connect to the aorta. So if you cannulate here and then only do one cannulation point, then everything in the head is whatever small vessel might supply a small part of the brain is being perfused with cryoprotective agents. So this is why we have decided that we're going to cannulate here to make perfusion faster, or make cannulation, the surgical cannulation process faster, and make sure that we can be certain that the whole brain is perfused well. All right, going on from here. So once that full procedure is done, then you want to transport, I already mentioned the patient to the facility. In our case, in most cases, it's Switzerland. So if someone is in Europe, then we would just transport the body to in one of our ambulances to Switzerland and then be there. You do this usually on dry ice. If someone, for whatever reason, has died on vacation somewhere abroad, then we would do exactly the same. We would transport the body, not exactly the same, not with the ambulance, but the body would be transported on dry ice to the by plane to the body. To the facility, and then the body would be cooled down to the glass transition temperature, which is around 100 minus 130 degrees, and at that point the body would then be vitrified at that point. We currently have one research project going on for people that are either that are transported by plane or over longer durations. Let's say again, someone dies in the US and needs to be transported back to Switzerland for long-term storage, for example. We're currently designing and prototyping a novel transport box that has kind of passive gradual cooling during the transport process, because this gives a couple of advantages, but this would go very much in detail. Within the next couple of weeks or so, we'll publish our research findings on our webpage. So, and of course, if anybody's interested, I can talk about it in the Q&A section. Now, at that point, you go into either an immersion doer or an ITS doer. Immersion is the current standard. Most of that already mentioned before. And ITS is the new technology, at least. It's not technically, it is newer technology, but there have been ITS doers in research labs, and also some for neuro or for brain preservation. There has not been yet been one for whole body preservation, but soon there will be one, because we're prototyping one, and then it will be in Switzerland. So just to give you a bit of an idea, so visually, this is one of our ambulances. This is the one here based in Berlin. This is the team doing a training in these ambulances. We currently cover basically all of Europe. Our thought process was always that we cover those regions that either are not covered by anybody else, or regions where we can honestly say that no one else or someone else covers it equally well. So we focused on Europe because our teams are in Europe. We don't have teams in Asia or in Africa or in other continents. We're currently looking into, we will probably cover through with partners and then also an own team, the Bay Area in California in the US, New York and southern Florida, to kind of move a bit into the UK, in the US. But of course our primary focus is very much staying on Europe. But we will then have covers there and would be able to transport bodies back to Switzerland for long-term storage. And apart from doing that, long-term storage, of course, is very much a focus. And then apart from that, research, as much research as you can do over the next decades and so on. So my plan is to not stop doing research for as long as I'm alive, to make cryopreservation better and better and better and better. Never stop. It's possible that in the future when people are being revived, they will say, well, you over-prepared a lot, but that's totally fine by me. So I'd rather much over-prepare than under-prepare. And I very much think that I will be cryopreserved there as well. So it's I'm very also intrinsically motivated by making sure that this works in the end. Right. So now we talked a lot about research and how the teams work and how different procedures work. So what we're being asked sometimes is, what can I do to make sure that my cryopreservation is better? I might not be a doctor, I might not be a researcher. So how can I help, quotation marks? If not for everybody, at least for the person themselves. So first part, of course, would be, well, if you're interested in cryopreservation, sign up, right? If you haven't signed up. And if you have questions, we're more than happy. Feel free to reach out. There will be my contact information at the end. And of course, you find it on our webpage as well. If there's any open questions or concerns or whatever, I'm more than happy to discuss. And if you in the end decide to either sign up with another organization or not at all, that's totally fine as well. But if you consider this something that you want to do, rather do it tomorrow. That's also we're trying to support this thought process a bit, because cryopreservation, of course, is always something that, at least for a lot of people, where it always feels like, well, I can do this tomorrow, right? It might be important to people, but then it feels like it's not urgent. So with this coupon code or this discount code, webinar 16, just as a quick reminder, we're kind of supporting this a bit, that people sign up. And by the way, this coupon code is only valid until Sunday this week. Second point would be, if you already signed up, make sure that all your documents are in order. Documents means, of course, your cryopreservation contract, but this is part of the sign-up process. Second point would be patient advance directive, last will. If you signed up with us, you get we have some samples, but of course you can change them as much as you want, and you should should talk to your lawyer and so on. But make sure that they're in order, and if you sign up with other organizations, make sure that this is in order. Then second would be, if you have some level of support in your family, in your friend group or whatever, make sure that they're aware of your cryopreservation contract, right? Make sure that you can have that discussion with them right now, rather than them having it with us, should you have died for whatever reason, right? So it's very important, if there's support within the family or next of kin, that helps a lot in cryopreservation. And now, of course, this is stuff that everybody should do, and it's relatively easy to do. Now, if you want to go a step further, or a couple steps further, right? Let's say you live relatively far away from any organization in, let's say like, I don't know, 10 hours away from Switzerland or from us, for example. In that case, it definitely helps if you have a doctor, like a local doctor, or even your doctor ideally, and a lawyer, or a lawyer on site that is aware of your plans and that would support us in the case that you die and we would need to come and to help out. It's always good. It's not absolutely required, but in certain circumstances, there have been cases in the past where this was tremendously valuable and helpful. So that absolutely helps. If we're going a bit further, let's say you live in, let's say, Spain or Italy, or relatively far from any organization, and you really you have a couple of people who really want to do something, then building like a local team, a local first aid team, a team that if someone dies last minute can do the initial support while we are on the way to the location with one of our ambulances. So in that case, that would help a lot if there's already something doing initial cool down. And for that, we're very much happy to help in that regard. So we're happy to train local teams. We have these what we call first aid kits. We supply them at cost to any local team who wants to have one, or even individuals who say, hey, I would like to have one of those things for myself. At cost, unfortunately, they're not super cheap. We have two versions, one with one of the chest compressions devices. With a chest compression device, it's a medical device, it's unfortunately relatively expensive. the cost of the whole box is around 6,500 euros. It's very important that the chest compression device is there, so maybe multiple people can have one together. And then we do this as long as, if there's a local case, the people who bought the box would supply that box for that local case. Right? Basically give this box to be used for this local case, and if they do, they get a new updated version, whatever the new version is, with the new devices and so on, from us in exchange to offering that box. So that is kind of the deal. We supply it at cost, and if someone agrees to then make the best effort at least to use that box for a local case. We also have a cut down version, a smaller version, which does not have this Lucas chest compression device included, which is the most expensive part. And I think currently they're around 400 euros or something like that. So if anybody's interested in that and wants to do something locally, more than happy, feel free to reach out, and then we're more than happy to help and support. All right. Going on, giving a bit more understanding now. Of course, let's switch gears a bit, moving away from the medical and the procedural stuff, and talk a bit more about how we're set up. So, if you talk about tomorrow, right? You sign up with tomorrow. There's actually multiple organizations in the back that do certain things and make sure that the cryopreservation is both high quality and then storage is safe and sound. So the logic in our structure is basically the following, right? So long-term storage is not with Tomorrow Biostasis. Long-term storage is with the European Biostasis Foundation in Switzerland. It's very important that storage is always with a non-profit foundation. Legally speaking, either EBF or separate foundations can act as so-called patient care trusts, meaning that they only manage the money that is being used for long-term storage and are the legal guardian for the people in cryopreservation, and only have basically three goals: keeping patients in cryostasis safe and sound, reviving them once possible, and reintegrating them into society. Right? So this is why we have this separation. To some people this sounds like a new thing, but in fact, most other organizations, ALCO, CI, and so on, have that separation as well. So ALCO, for example, has a patient care trust. ALCO uses suspended animation, or ICE, International Cryo-Medical Experts, for their SST, just like Tomorrow does SST, and then EBF does storage. We just have a very transparent separation and very clear separation between these organizations. And we have a bit of a different mixing and matching that fits better to the European legal system and the European situation, to kind of between who does what. Yeah, if there's more questions, then more than happy to dig deeper here as well, of course. Right, so here I already said kind of that we have multiple organizations. So Tomorrow does all the member contacts, it does outreach, communication, PR, it does the contracts, it does all the medical equipment, it does engineering for medical equipment, and it does all the standby and stabilization, so SST. Then we have there's the patient care trust. There can be multiple, there can even be many. EBF can also act as a patient care trust, but they can also be separated. They do these things that I just mentioned, these three, making sure that patients are safe and sound, making sure that revival at some point or once possible people can be revived, and reintegration. And then EBF acts, or is the location of long-term storage, at least here in Europe, right? It's a non-profit foundation as well with the storage facility, and it also does research, and it does oversight of Tomorrow. In the future, if there's more patient care trusts, they can have all individual oversight to Tomorrow to make sure that there's another check and balance to ensure high quality. Right. Long-term goals. Switching gears a bit. Our long-term goals at Tomorrow and also at EBF is A, to make cryopreservation significantly more affordable, right? It's very much a pet peeve of mine that cryopreservation, if you want to do it high quality, is somewhere currently, and you want to have a safe and storage location and so on, is somewhere in the range of 200,000, right? That's super annoying, and my picture should come back in a second, I guess. So cost basically should never be a limiting factor for people who want to be cryopreserved. It should purely be a decision if you want to be cryopreserved. And unfortunately, that is not possible everywhere yet. So we're trying to bring costs down, and we're supporting currently or by now a range of other organizations who are considering building or already actively doing very, very low cost cryopreservations. There might be a bit of a price difference, and they might also do brain only and so on. But still, if this is, it's better than nothing argument, or at least I would argue so. So that is very much a focus of mine. Then I think it's very important that this whole sector grows, becomes more stable, increases reputation, gets more integrated into existing structures and so on, so that we can ensure this long-term survival of this whole organization or this whole sector. And then last but not least, I mentioned it already multiple times, both on the tomorrow side as well as on EBF, and research is always very much a focus. And when I say research, I mean a combination of R&D. So there's research and fundamental research, basic research, and on the other hand, then there's engineering and implementing research findings into day-to-day practice. On the tomorrow side, we're more on the engineering side. On the EBF side, we're more on the engineering. On the research side, and then kind of in the middle, we have a bit of a crossover, making sure that new findings get implemented and so on. So these are kind of our long-term goals at tomorrow. Right, now to leave at least a good amount of time for Q&A, already coming to the last few slides, so I'm leaving this slide on for a bit. So if you are interested, if you want to dig deeper, if you want to talk about the topic, again, we're more than happy to do that, right? So even if you're not sure yet if you want to sign up, we're happy to talk and discuss and offer information. So definitely, please do not hesitate to reach out, either the team or I. I'm more than happy to discuss and talk. Here you can see my email. Here you can see my calendar link to book a 30-minute, or also have 20 minutes, but whatever you prefer. A video call to chat and discuss with the community if you have any questions, or if you are in the process or considering to sign up. So definitely, please feel free to reach out. And of course, you find all this information also on our webpage, tomorrowbiostasis.com. Now, as the last couple steps, if you want to sign up, go to the webpage. This is actually not the current design of the webpage, and we're actually launching a new improved version of it in the next couple of weeks. But the process works the same. Just find the sign up link, and then there's a process, and if there's any questions, we're always available. As an announcement, we're gonna soon, it's actually already online, you can already look at it, we're gonna soon launch basically a full-on A to Z magazine about cryopreservation. Not only about us, but about the whole sector, where there will be news and events and videos and articles and research findings that we're publishing, and protocols, and if someone wants to build like one of these emergency first aid kit boxes that I've shown, there will be a guide how to do that, and protocols and manuals, and a very, very extensive list of things. It will be called Tomorrow Insight, and the domain is tomorrow.bio/insight. It will really cover, from A to Z the whole topic, and kind of will be a news source for people who want to, stay up to date with the community, including, as I said, events and gatherings, initially in Berlin, but then also in other regions. There will be sign-up events. You name it, we plan to do it. And if you feel like there's something you want to organize a local meetup, we're also more than happy to support that. So feel free to reach out regarding that as well. And very much now, last but not least, just as a save the date, in October 21st to 23rd, there will be the next installment of our annual Biostasis conference. So this year, of course, Biostasis 2022. It will be at the facility in Rafts, close to Zurich in Switzerland. Most people will probably join online, but you can also join on site. Joining online, of course, is fully for free. Joining on site will have some cost for catering and so on and so on. But feel free to save the date, and then soon on all of our channels there will be an announcement with registration links and how to participate. But now, without really, last but not least, my contact information again, and more than happy now to answer all questions that you might have. All right, I'm waiting until I see the questions, and then I can take it from there. All right, I'm getting an iPad. Awesome. Cool. And of course, please add any questions that you still might have, right? More than happy to see new questions coming up. All right. Starting from the top. The first question is, if I live in a motorhome, I'd like to have hypothermia equipment integrated and could trigger myself or automatically. Are there any options or suggestions for that? Yeah, the suggestion would be don't do that. And the reason for that is cryopreservation is only legally possible once you are legally pronounced dead, right? So cryopreservation for the time being and probably for the next decades is not a medical procedure that, like how you could do on yourself, right? So it's only and exclusively possible once you've been legally pronounced dead by a doctor, by a physician assistant, by a nurse, whatever is in that country where you are. So let's say, for argument's sake, that what you mentioned, like in a motorhome, you trigger some system or whatever, right? If that happens, the body would be ruled, or the death would be ruled non-natural, at least 99.999% probability. In that case, the body would not be released after it is found for cryopreservation. It could be confiscated. There's a tremendous amount of delay if that happens. So, in any case, don't do anything at home. Our first aid boxes, they come with extensive documentation and disclaimers. Don't do anything to anybody if they haven't been pronounced yet, right? The downside of doing something is significantly higher than just waiting. So I would absolutely advise against it, and only start doing anything with bodies once they're legally pronounced dead. Second question would be, centrifugal pumps are better than roller pumps, less damage. So kind of. So in medicine, in operation rooms, centrifugal pumps are indeed being used for blood circulation, and the reason for that is that the red blood cells, they're being, by this roller pump, the roller pump basically works, it has a tube, and this tube is compressed by a roller and then is being pushed forward by that roller. So if that roller presses the red blood cell against the walls, the red blood cells can burst, they can break, basically physically, they're being squished to, squished to death, kind of, right? So that is why if you have blood, if you're circulating blood, then roller pumps are not used. Centrifugal pumps don't do that. Of course, in our case, we don't have blood, right? We perfuse cryoprotective agent. So in our case, we don't need this advantage of a centrifugal pump, and we use a roller pump because roller pumps have something that is has a significant advantage. Centrifugal pumps basically generate constant flow. So it's one constant flow that is being pushed in. But of course, the body is used to what is called pulsative flow, right? If you check your wrist, you feel like there's a pulse wave, right? There's a pulse going up and down. Roller pumps generate that pulse flow due to these rollers that basically come and then they press and then they release and then they press in again, they release and they press in. It generates the same flow wave or pulse wave. So the reason why we use roller pumps is because that flow, the vessels are more used to it, and there's some indication that if you use pulsative flow, you get better perfusion in smaller vessels. So that's why roller pumps are advantageous for what we do, whereas centrifugal pumps are indeed used in operations rooms. Next question is, when are you going to be operational in the US? So that is probably a question of a couple of weeks to low amount of months. So we're currently setting up, when I say the US, I mean New York, San Francisco, Bay Area. It's going to be actually the whole Bay Area, and then Southern Florida, not the whole continental US. So that is, within a couple of months. we're soon gonna launch like a pre-launch, like, you know, hey, are you interested? Do you want to learn more about it? It's gonna go on all of our, if we have your email somewhere, you're probably gonna get that. And then people can indicate their interest, and then we're gonna reach out to them. There's gonna be probably events as well. I can't really fully promise yet when exactly it will be. It might also be that in some locations we're starting first and then going to the others, but it's going to be relatively soon. I would very much hope this year. If there's no crazy supply chain issue coming up with COVID or whatever, then this year would be the goal. Next question would be, seems that proximity to cryopreservation location is the most controllable thing we can do. How would you consider this making a decision between tomorrow, Cryonics Institute, and Alco? Yeah, absolutely. Proximity is extremely important. And so I don't have that on my slides, but one of the biggest things is actually that you can do is, should you have any, you know, medical issue that might lead to your death, terminal disease or anything like that, moving close to one of the cryopreservation organizations, either standby teams or facilities, is probably the highest impact thing that you can do. Now, the only reason why I'm not putting this up front and center is because even though a lot of people understand that that is the best thing to do, very few people actually do it. And the reason for that, I kind of can understand that, right? Because, I mean, your family, you're dying, like you might not be even able to move anymore. If you're from outside the US, you might not be able to legally move into the US and stay there, and so on and so on. And then you might want to see your family, I don't know. So most people unfortunately do it. But you absolutely should. It's really, really important. It's a high impact thing to do. So how to differentiate between the organizations? So we currently do not even allow sign-ups from outside of Europe, right? So people from the US, from, I don't know, from Asia, from Africa, from Australia, and so on, they cannot even sign up just because of that reason, right? We've decided in the beginning that the standby, the proximity is the biggest quality metric. And if you have high proximity of your membership, right? Like everybody, for example, in Europe, you can have multiple teams, and at some point you have like a high, like there's one team within every, I don't know, 2 hours or whatever, right? If you allow signups from all over the world, right, we might have 25 members from Australia and 25 from South Korea, and then here a few and there a few. We would never have this critical mass. And we decided that our guiding principle is we build teams, or we are there where we can honestly say that we're going to do the best job compared to other organizations, and that for now is only Europe, right? We do technically accept members from regions where it's a bit, where we can arguably say we're probably going to do an equal job, but not necessarily better. But if maybe, you know, South Africa, we would do an equal job. But this rule is currently focused on Europe. And so let's say you want to sign up tomorrow, right? And you are in the US, then sign up with Alco. Absolutely. If Alco is too expensive, sign up with CI, but make sure you have very good standby, a very clear plan how standby works. With CI, standby is not included in the price, right? Signing up with CI is not sufficient. You need to make standby preparations. So if that is the case, then do that, right? If you're in Europe, I would argue it makes sense to look at what we do, right? Because we're the closest, we have the storage facility here, and so on. We know the legal system the best, and so on. In other regions, don't sign up with us, right? If you come from, I don't know, if there's someone from South Korea in the call, signing up with us doesn't make sense. Go to one of the other organizations that actually allows signing up. There's an argument to be made. So let's say you're in Europe, right? But you want to sign up. We are also not cheap, right? So for signing up with us, with insurance, you still need 200,000 euros of coverage, right? If you're young, that is very affordable, but for some people, insurance might not be possible. So I just said that you can sign up, like when you sign up with CI, you need to make standby preparations, right? So it is in fact possible to sign up with CI and then make standby preparations with us. That is indeed possible. We can act as a pure standby organization as well, if you don't care about storage in Switzerland, for example. But that is a longer discussion, what are the advantages and disadvantages there. Right, and by the way, feel free, if I haven't answered this question comprehensively, just put another message in. Next question would be: Can you keep cryo can you keep cryo unit at home, and for how many years the cost of 200,000 stands for? So you technically can have cryopreservation equipment at home. You cannot have a cryopreservation storage facility at home. That is, in some countries you might, but in all countries that I'm aware of, you're not allowed to do that. The 200,000 is for indefinite storage, so there's no additional fees. And the logic for that, or how that works, is in the following way. Around 60 to 80,000 of that, usually 80, is being used for standby stabilization and transport. So that is for the medical team and the cryoprotective agent and so on. The remaining 120,000 are being given to the non-profit foundations. Those non-profit foundations now invest that money with around 1 to 2% return above inflation. Of course, in these current times, that's quite difficult, but over long periods of time, at least in the history, that has always been possible. And most likely it will be possible again. So the maintenance of cryopreservation, so the annual cost, liquid nitrogen and so on, right? That is all being paid by only the return. Meaning the principal amount of this 120,000 euros is not being touched. And it's in fact inflation adjusted into the future, so that that money can be used in the future for revival and reintegration and so on. So that is the way. So 200,000 euros or any other, it's indefinite cryopreservation storage as long as it's needed until revival is possible. Right, coming to the next question. If I have a fundamental research idea, cryosymatics, i.e. Using microwaves and ultrasound patterns to reduce crystallization, where I could test it or where to check if it has already been tested. So there are two ways of how, or two approaches how microwaves and ultrasound is being currently considered. It's mostly in the warming up of after cryopreservation. At some point you need to warm up the body again, so mostly it's being researched for warming. There are some, I'm not super sure if there has been much research for in the cooling process, but in the warming up process there definitely is research going on. So if you want to reach out, feel free to reach out to us. I can connect you to a couple of labs who have been doing research in that space, and who might be willing to take on a new researcher if this is something that you want to do, and if you have a research background and so on. But this is of course very, very fundamental research, right? Basic research. There will be a lot of research needs to go into that until I think we can endeavor into the warming up phase of things. My mental focus is currently more on getting better cryopreservation in, and making very tangible improvements to make, my goal is to, what can I do today to have a better cryopreservation tomorrow, and then do the long-term stuff over time. But it's still a very important and very interesting research field. All right. Next question is, since preservation of the brain is paramount, is there any research into the vitrification of neural tissue and its functional restoration? So yeah, so most of the research that we're doing or funding is always looking at the brain. So when I said before, we're using a modification of a cryoprotective agent, right? That is we look at the brain, we look at ice formation of the brain, we look at ultrastructure of the brain and so on. So of course the rest of the body is also important, but the brain, of course, I think everybody agrees, is definitely the most important part. So most of the research that we're funding is in brain. Functional restoration, there are some early research groups that look at functional restoration after cryopreservation, but this is very early research. They've just been set up in the last couple of months. So this will definitely take a significant amount of time until there's other results. And there might not be any positive results, but it's definitely something that is being more and more looked at, but very early. Next questions, why NFTs? Yeah, so we're launching, or we're currently in the process. Of course, we're not doing this in the next weeks anymore, looking at the current performance of Bitcoin and all the other crypto assets. So we decided to do an NFT launch together, or basically, they do it with us, so we do it with them, with an organization called Longevity DAO in the US. The reason for that is part of what we do, a part of all the research stuff that I've looked at and so on, is for me and for us, it's very important to do community building. That's why we like to support all these local organizations and help out, and if someone wants to start something and so on. That's why we do these webinars, right? And personal events and conferences. Now, of course, there might be some people who don't enjoy NFTs, and honestly, don't think NFTs are the coolest and most necessary thing ever. But then again, there's a lot of people who like it. I don't think we would do NFTs because we're now the biggest NFT friends, but there is something to be said. If you have something, then sometimes people feel more part of a community, right? So consider this NFT thing a ticket to be part of a community where then you would, for example, be invited for free to one of our conferences, right? And you can come, you can join for free, right? We might do other events in the future that are then for free, right? We might do like private, like small group online workshops or online events, right? Where we can only admit a small amount of people because it's supposed to be a personal discussion, right? The goal is to basically use this as a community building tool. And to be fair, you get a cool NFT that you can use as your Twitter avatar or whatever, if that's something that you would like to do. But consider it a ticket to like a group of community members who really want to dig deep and want to support research. Because every NFT sale proceeds we would fully use for research and not for anything else. So that's kind of the thought process behind it. Next question would be operational in the US, but the patient must be European. No, so once we do launch in the US, we would also allow them in these regions that US citizens would be able to sign up with us for storage, well, then in Switzerland. And in the very long-term future, we might have at some point a storage facility also in the US, but that's definitely not something that we're going to do in the next years. It's more in the, well, I don't know, 10 years in the future. I'm not exactly sure, but more in the long-term future. Yeah. Next question would be another question. Ask Chinese or Russian rich people for money for research. They are crazy places. They will do. So hopefully, I haven't met anybody who wants to donate large amounts of research. Of course, we have research donations to the foundation, also to Tomorrow. If you know anybody who's very affluent, then please connect them to us. I think research funding is always very important. Next question would be, will we dream in Cryosleep? No. So as much as we understand dreams and consciousness and all of that, right? And of course, there's always, we don't fully understand everything, but as much as we do, no. It's just, it's like general anesthesia. When you have ever been in general anesthesia, you're just gone for that time, and then once the anesthesia stops, you're back, right? So as much as we understand, cryopreservation will be exactly like that. Of course, when I'm saying that, that's speculation. I haven't been in cryopreservation yet, so I can't actually say, but I'm not aware of any process or anything that gives me any indication that this is different, right? It's like being dead with the potential of then being resuscitated and revived in the long-term future once and if this becomes possible. Next question, where's the question? Okay, next question would be, don't you think that you should be a friendly hospice in the nearby of Rafts where a terminally ill patient could spend the last weeks, month of his life in order to get the best cryopreservation suspension? Yeah, so this is absolutely A, part of the plan, right? And then B, in the long-term future, we might even buy, build, or partner with one. It's absolutely helpful if there's an organization, there's a hospice, at Zurich Lake or whatever, where you could go, unfortunately spend your last weeks of life, but spend them with high quality of life, and then should you unfortunately die, then go into cryopreservation. So this is not something where we have something in place right now, but this is definitely something that will be there in the hopefully not so far future. Next question would be, since you want to reduce the cost of cryopreservation, what do you think of getting the sale of other organs like kidney, heart to pay for maximal quality of a neuro head only cryopreservation? Yeah, so that's getting into that game comes up with, or would come with a lot of ethical considerations and a lot of lot of open questions that are not legal and ethical. The other point is that sale of organs doesn't really work in Europe. There is no sale of organs. There is no market. It's not allowed to sale. So I don't think combining these two things is ethically a good idea. I don't think it's legally possible. It's not something we will even remotely get into anytime. Yeah. Next question. Do you support cryothanasia? So probably that's a combination of cryopreservation and euthanasia. So it's not possible to do euthanasia with cryopreservation for good reasons. What of course is possible in some countries, and there have been cases before, mostly in the US, where someone decided, in the US it's called death with dignity, where someone has decided to determine the time of the end of their life themselves, right? Then do euthanasia or assisted suicide, depending on the country, or death with dignity, and then go into cryopreservation after. So these things are fully separated, right? It's not the same organization. We don't get involved in the euthanasia part or the assisted suicide part. We only do the cryopreservation part. But there are other organizations where you can, of course, do both. Or not, sorry, you can't do both, but you can do the assisted suicide part. So if someone wants to do that, that's totally up to them. But we would only then, once the person is legally pronounced with whatever the legal framework in that country is, then cryopreservation can start. These two things cannot be combined legally, and of course you can imagine a future scenario where there could be a combination, but currently it's not possible. And to be fair, it's also not that. So the advantage in the quality of cryopreservation is relatively small. So there's practically no quality increase if you start 1 minute after resuscitation. 1 minute after pronouncement or 1 minute before, right? So the heart stops and the patient is pronounced, and then you directly start with the cool down process. That's totally fine. So even combining these two things, it's not super important, and again, currently not possible. Next question would be, what happens when there are two patients at the exact same time for the ambulance team? So this is extremely unlikely. So just to give you an idea, based on our member age and based on our membership size and so on, I think currently there's around one cryopreservation case every 8 years, right? So most of the cases that we're currently doing, they're body donors for research or for other organizations and so on. We do them pro bono, and of course the research donation anyway pro bono, to keep our team, up to date and trained and so on. The likelihood that there's going to be two preservations at the same time is excruciatingly small. Secondarily, we have multiple teams, right? So we have one team here in Berlin. There's another team that we partner with in Amsterdam, and then soon there will be a team in Switzerland, in Zurich as well. There's a range of volunteers that either we support or we collaborate with and so on all over Europe that you can then have for the cryopreservation. And of course, there are international teams that do international cases. For example, there's one in the US. So if one of those two cases, for example, is pre-planned, or both of them are kind of, you see that the person is getting worse and worse, then you can bring one team over and make sure that there's always enough teams. Of course, in the future, you can imagine that at some point there might be 10 cases once more people sign up for cryopreservation, right? But at that point, of course, we would also have more teams. So we always keep in clear sight that there's enough teams even for these eventualities. Right. What happens to patients if tomorrow or EBF have financial problems? So the long-term storage, so once you're a patient, once you're in cryopreservation, tomorrow is not responsible for you anymore. It's then only the nonprofit foundation, right? The nonprofit foundation is built in a way, and it's very important for me because I said it before, but I think I will be cryopreserved there in the future as well, together with everybody else, right? So it's very important for me personally that the structure and everything is built so that the governance structure, the geographical location, and the financial stability is all optimized for max. So the probability that the foundation, it doesn't have high cost or overhead or many employees or anything like that, right? It keeps its money very tight and makes sure that there's always enough money to maintain cryopreservation. So the probability of that is very, very low. Same with tomorrow, right? Tomorrow can technically, anything can go out of business, but we're running the organization in a way that the probability, and my camera I think comes back in a second again, the probability is very, very low. Yeah, let me quickly wave to the camera is coming back in a second. So the probability is very, very low. If for whatever reason this should happen on the foundation side, it is extremely unlikely. I'm very much working on building basically backup agreements with all the other international cryopreservation organizations, that if anywhere something gets unstable, that the other organization, there would be a framework agreement so that the other organizations would take over. This is not an easy negotiation, so this might take time, or it will take time, but I think in the long run this is something very important for the whole sector. Right, next one would be, when will the conference be this year and how can one sign up? So the conference will be in October 21st to 23rd. Sign up is not possible yet, but within probably this week there will be an email going out where there will be a sign up link. So just stay tuned. We will also have it on the EBF webpage, so ebf.foundation, and it will also be an announcement on tomorrow on our insight page, tomorrow.bio/insight. So email that or that, and also there will be a YouTube announcement video. If you follow us anywhere, you will know either this or next week. And save the date, October 21st to 23rd. Are there angel investors willing to invest in cryopreservation? Would be useful having a branch in the institution dealing with this. So there are people who are willing to either donate or invest. We do accept investors, so people can invest in tomorrow, but they need to be very aware that we're a mission-driven company. We're not there, or a mission-driven organization. We're not there to optimize for short-term returns or money making or return of investment or selling the company. In fact, we will never sell the company, right? So there's a lot of stuff that they need to agree with, but if they do, then people can invest in tomorrow. And of course, if you're an investor, there's also the potential to make money, but not in the short term, and never from the money that is being used for cryopreservations. So cryopreservations are excluded from all of that, so that there's no profit motive in the cryopreservation. This is why this oversight from EBF is there. And EBF, this is a foundation, so investing is not possible, but you can donate to EBF, or you can donate to research projects directly. So if anybody's interested in that, feel free to reach out. Will the October event be in Berlin or in Zurich? It will be in Berlin. It will be in Zurich. The Berlin facility there isn't. This is like here we're almost like there's a medical team, but otherwise it's an office. So with a bit of engineering, a bit of medical stuff. But the event will be in Zurich at the facility, and it will also be online. So everything will be fully streamed, or at least there's one. Every talk will be fully streamed, so you can also join virtually. And like last year, the years before, there will be a lot of interaction, like Q&A and so on with the researchers and speakers at the conference. Next question would be, do you think you will ever be competitive with contemporary funeral services? Not anytime soon. So I think this is imaginable once you can actually resuscitate people from cryopreservation. Until then, I don't think you will be. And the reason for that is cryopreservation is significantly, well, first of all, it's not as much in the Overton window, so it's not as accepted, right? And it is also just significantly more expensive. So I think for the time being, this will not be the case. But then again, we also don't need to be, right? Let's say, in quotation marks, only 1 million, right? It's far from 1 million people have signed up for cryopreservation. But let's say 1 million of people sign up for cryopreservation, and of course funeral services would be still way, way bigger. But at 1 million people signed up, you can already do a lot of stuff. You can have a lot of money for research. You can really do great service at that point. But this, of course, is down the line. Next question is, for how many years the company is working and approximately how many people have already been preserved by your firm? So the company has been around so there's a bit of a difference, right? The foundation has been around since officially it was incorporated in 2019, beginning of 2019. The company has been around for a bit longer, I think 2018, but it has only been really actively doing, and I've been full-time on it since around the end of 2019. The people running the organizations, both the Tomorrow and EBF, have been in the field for some of them many decades. Not me, but I'm not that long, but also significantly longer than I'm full-time doing it. And then all the other people, some of them, as I said, have been decades in this. So some of our board members have been, I think, 20 years plus in the field. So the organizations definitely are younger, but the people have been in it in volunteer functions for really ages. Yeah. Oh yeah, and how many people have been preserved? So unfortunately, not unfortunately, but the amount of cryopreservations that are being done in Europe are very, very small. So there's around, let's say, somewhere between 1 to maybe 5, but usually 2 or 3 cryopreservations per year for all organizations together, right? So most of the cryopreservation work that we do is on body donors. So with those, we do around maybe 1 every 2 months or so. So I think we've done since the beginning of last year, maybe like 10 or so, somewhere in that ballpark. And they are there to train, to keep the team up to date and so on. If you try to only train based on real world cryopreservations, the amount is just, no one can do that. The amount is just, even in the US, there aren't enough cases to keep your medical teams trained. So it's always important that there's enough that you get body donors that don't care about cryopreservation, that just donate their body to medical research, where then this cryopreservation procedure as a research project can be improved and trained, and people can be educated in it. Right. Coming to the last questions, and since we're already a bit over time, if there's any last minute questions, put them in now. Otherwise, we're going to close the stream once I'm done with all the questions. The next one is it possible to perform full cryo on just the head if you choose that option before shipping, or to center if you are not local? So with us, it is not possible. So we only do whole body cryopreservation. There's a range of reasons for that. In most countries, it's legally, it depends a bit, but most of the legal problems in cryopreservation in the past have come from what is called neurocriopreservation, which is head only. The advantages, there might be some medical advantages as well. That's very difficult to discuss. I don't think they're that important, but there might be some. Mostly we've decided to do whole body only because these legal problems in the past. And then secondarily, it's very important that the cryopreservation space as a whole grows. And for most people who are not super deep in the topic yet and have thought about it for the last 10 years or so, for most people it's significantly more acceptable if you just do the whole body cryopreservation as opposed to the head. So in our case, we only do whole body cryopreservation. Next question is, if the company stops working, what happens to the cryostorages? So if Tomorrow should in the future at some point go out of business, nothing happens to the cryostorage. All the cryostorage stays in storage, nothing happens. All the money is with a non-profit foundation, nothing happens. So of course, as I said, Tomorrow is very much optimized on maximum stability as well. But should 30 years down the line, there's, I don't know, whatever happens, or 50 years down the line, nothing happens to the patients in storage. They're all safe and sound. All right, last question that I'm seeing, so last chance. When will be the app released? So for people who might not be aware, we're currently in the process of building an app that is used as kind of an emergency system, and for making sure that if something happens to someone, then we are notified and emergency contacts are notified and so on. So it works with these smart rings and smart watches and so on. So It is currently already in being tested. Like there's alpha testers from the community testing. So if you want to be added to that, feel free to reach out to us. It's not fully done yet, so you will encounter some bugs, but you can already test it, both on Android and iOS. We will in fact open source the app, so it will be fully open sourced within the next couple of weeks, and then we will continue developing it with the community. So if anybody is a software engineer and wants to, help build this or continue building this app, it will be fully open sourced, not only for our organization, but it will be then usable for every organization out there, right? Either in Europe, in America, doesn't matter where, and to make it really, really good, because it needs to be really good, and making it perfect with all the updates on iOS or Android, you need to have continuous development ongoing, of course. Right. Last, that is that a question? If you can show there's functional restoration of a part of the brain tissue, would that help with popularization? It's kind of a question. So the question is, if we would be able to show partial restoration of a part of the brain, would that popularize the idea of cryopreservation? So probably a bit, but then again, usually, unfortunately, research findings that are not really, really flashy, and partial restoration of function of the brain is, it would be flashy or would be very surprising and great in the medical and scientific communities, but for general population, most likely, unfortunately, these results don't do as much as you would hope. And the second reason is it's very difficult to do, right? It's not something easy to do. So I think currently the limited amount of money that this whole field has, as donations, research funding, and so on, you can use it in a different way, a better way. But then again, if someone is super excited about it, it's absolutely meaningful work. And I think it would do something, just maybe not as much as one would hope. I think the research finding that really would do a lot, if you could cryopreserve a whole mouse or a rat, and then take it out of cryopreservation, walks around, is safe and sound, does well, and so on. But then again, this is not something I think that is feasible within the next couple of decades. Right. All right. Since I'm not seeing any more questions, I would like to thank everybody who joined us. I would definitely encourage you to reach out. Please definitely do not hesitate. Just join us, talk to us. I don't know, reach out, send us an email, book a call. And if someone wants to sign up, go to our webpage, tomorrowbiostasis.com. And then there's a sign up link, and with the discount code webinar 16, there's a 50% off on the membership for the next 12 month insurance. Of course, you still need to pay, but for the membership, it's 50% off for 12 months, and this coupon code works until Sunday. So without further ado, thanks again. Join our conference. Keep a lookout for next streams, and until then, talk to you soon.